Today we are going to listen to several of our neighbors give testimony before our city council regarding a topic they dub race equity. We will attempt to isolate any claimed problems, evidence for those problems, and requests made of our local government and therefore made of us as taxpayers. And of course we will provide our commentary throughout. The first speaker is the main organizer of an effort that seeks public funding, as well as to be given an advisory role in our city government as well as throughout our schools. Her name is Erin Phillips.
Joe, I don't know who's first on the list, but hold on just a second. The Deputy Mayor's pointed out to me that I skipped over something. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to disclose tonight? But thank you, Deputy Mayor, for pointing that out. I take it your name is Erin.
My name is Erin, yep.
So for everyone in the room, the way we do this, if you would like to make public comment tonight, you can speak at the beginning of the meeting on anything that has something to do with city business. When you come up to the mic, please introduce yourself, tell us your name and the street you live on the island, assuming you live on the island, and we'll give you up to 3 minutes to speak. You don't have to fill 3 minutes, but you can take 3 minutes if you'd like. And if you're here to speak about something on the agenda, you can speak on that now, or you can speak on that when we get to the item later in the meeting. So, Erin, please go ahead.
Thanks. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My white and Caucasian side of me wants me to start with a joke, but channeling my Filipino grandma, I want to say something like, listen up.
Notice that right from the get-go, Ms. Phillips identifies as a particular racial makeup and even indicates that her differing racial components make her want to seek to express herself in different ways. Ms. Phillips does not represent her opinions as those of Erin Phillips, a whole and distinct individual person, but rather as though two distinct people occupying the same physical body. This view of racial makeup as a core defining factor is important.
But yes, my name is Erin Phillips, and I'm thrilled to be here. Tonight, this group of residents and I would like to share our experiences and work related to race equity. Let me start by giving you a brief explanation of what that is. Simply put, race equity is access to equal opportunities for people from all racial and ethnic backgrounds.
Ms. Phillips defines race equity as access to equal opportunities for people from all racial and ethnic backgrounds. Ms. Phillips does not indicate access to what, exactly, which is an important detail. Does she mean equal access to the boardroom of Microsoft, or does she mean equal access to a person's birthday party, or does she mean equal access to government services? This is a very important oversight, because exactly what she wants access to defines what, if any, role our local government and public funds have in providing that access.
I believe that representation is at the heart of race equity, which is why I founded a nonprofit called We Live Here Too.
Ms. Phillips says that she believes representation is at the heart of race equity, but again does not specify representing what. Does she mean representing for Microsoft, or for a birthday party, or for representing government?
Whose sole purpose is to promote race equity on the island by gathering meaningful data on the needs and desires of our minority population.
Here Ms. Phillips says that her nonprofit works for race equity by gathering the needs and desires of our minority population. This is a significant change in her message, and threatens the idea of equity. Instead of being concerned with equal access to something, for all races and ethnic backgrounds, she now focuses instead on minority populations to the exclusion of other populations. And instead of focusing on access for these minority populations to something as of yet undefined, her message changes instead to the needs and desires of that narrowed minority population. While Ms. Phillips is gathering what it is that this minority population wants, we are left wondering how what they want has to do with the vague access to equal opportunity and representation previously mentioned.
But we need leaders like you who are willing to act on our behalf.
Here Ms. Phillips wants government to act on their behalf, which of course our local government should do, as it should act on behalf of all citizens who fund it. But we are left puzzled by what it is that Ms. Phillips wants our government to do. Does she want government to do something in the quest for the equal access to something as of yet unspecified, as she first mentions? Or does she want government instead to pursue the needs and wants of a smaller population, as she later mentions while jettisoning the idea of equity entirely?
Furthermore, as a mother of a 4-year-old quarter Filipina girl,
Again, for some reason, the racial makeup of her child is mentioned as a defining fact.
I want her to look around her and see her future self as a police officer, computer programmer, founder, or anything else that she'd like to be.
This is a worthy desire for one's child. As her child's mother, Ms. Phillips is in the best position to ensure that her child pursues being a police officer, computer programmer, founder, or anything else that she wants to be. It is not clear, however, why this desire of a mother is shared with our local government. Surely Ms. Phillips understands that her child is not limited by government in that pursuit, and that Americans have equal access to those opportunities.
Now, some island residents have expressed to me that there are more pressing issues on the island to address.
Hopefully those islanders have conveyed to Ms. Phillips that she has not yet provided any problem to address, much less how we should prioritize it. So far Ms. Phillips has not specified a single problem, much less identified why it is the role of our local government and taxpayer money to fix it. We do not know if Ms. Phillips is suggesting that our local government needs to raise her child to understand that she can be a police officer or computer programmer or not. Unfortunately, we would have to guess at a problem, because Ms. Phillips has not identified one,
including safety, infrastructure, and mobility. I would submit, though, that the way to most successfully solve those problems long-term is to invest in race equity and diversity in our city.
Ms. Phillips now suggests that access to equal opportunity to, something still unspecified, and diversity will allow our government to better solve other issues. This may very well be true, but we do not have enough information. Equal access to opportunity to what? How do we not have that equal opportunity now? Diversity is a powerful asset when it comes to solving problems, as differing viewpoints and values and life experiences lead to more creative and more informed problem solving. But what is the role, if any, of our local government in creating diversity? Diversity where? Diversity how?
Organizations like the Seattle City Council and corporations like Microsoft have recognized this need and are investing heavily in race equity, both as a means for positive social change and to solve problems through innovation. And diversity is required to make that happen.
If the powerful private sector is cultivating diversity, which would presumably lead to a more diverse population moving to our island and being involved in our community, what then is the role of our local government and of our public funds? Is there even a role?
I know that this is a difficult conversation to have at times.
We agree this conversation is difficult, only because no problem has been identified while it appears we are asked to assume that one exists.
I myself continue to grapple with my own privilege and how others have not had the privileges that I have.
People have varying levels of privilege, and certainly some people can struggle with that. But how is this the business of our public machinery of government?
My ask tonight would be that the City Council appoint a group of individuals to advise the Council moving forward and to develop a plan to engage in this work of race equity. I personally would like to reconvene in a matter of weeks to meet and discuss the details of such an arrangement.
Our ask is that Ms. Phillips not utilize the time resources of our local government until she better understands what problem it is that she is trying to identify, so that we can then consider whether that problem should be addressed by our public time and funds. Most problems in our lives are outside the role of government, for example, how we raise our children. In our view, Ms. Phillips is in no position to be advising our government, as she clearly does not appear to understand the problem she feels exists. We should all be cautioned that vague, undefined problems can lead to very poor and costly, so-called, solutions.
In closing, I have said many things, and I've said this many times, but I'll continue to say that we must simply have the courage and the kindness to confront these issues together and create a community where we can bring our whole selves to the table and collectively achieve our goals. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person on the list is Christine Jimenez. Please come on up.
Hi there. My name is Christine, and I am a homeowner, live on Medway Lane and in the Metamere area. I'm a voter and a resident. I'm also Cuban-American and married to an Afro-Latino.
Yet again, DNA makeup is presented as if we are supposed to use this information in some way. How is the racial makeup of a person relevant to our local government?
And we have 2 kids that are in the school district. I'm here tonight to share with you 2 realities that I've discovered about raising a family of color on Bainbridge. The first is that you're likely to face racial discrimination and bias.
This is unfortunate. But discrimination how? From who? In what way? What is the evidence? Is it a case where a child is not invited to a birthday party because of discrimination? Or is it a matter of discrimination that would be in the realm of responsibility for our local government, such as being discriminated against for a government job?
And second, that your children are unlikely to have role models in the community who look like them.
Why does it matter if role models in the community do not look like them? Are they not raised to know that their value comes from the content of their character, such that they can aspire to role models like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, regardless of whether they look like a middle-aged black man or like an old tired woman? Do they not have the internet and television? Are they unable to visit Seattle? More importantly, is this problem to be addressed by our local government and local funds, or is this problem better addressed by parents raising strong children of intelligence?
In the 4 years we have lived here, my husband has faced racial harassment at work. My children have been subjected to racial comments from peers at school, and someone spray painted the N-word on the street in our neighborhood.
Assuming Christine's allegations are accurate, her husband's work is not the purview of our local government unless he works for the city. The speech of other children should be addressed by better speech and solid parenting, as that will not be the last time her children will encounter ignorant people who express ignorant opinions, especially children who have such limited life experience. Christine's last complaint may be within the purview of local government, and she can report acts of vandalism to public property.
These overt racist incidents tend to really surprise many of my friends. But honestly, I have bigger concerns. Let me explain. One morning last March, I received a text from a close friend of mine with a link to a New York Times podcast and the message, "You have to listen to this." After I got the kids on the school bus, I started the podcast and the breakfast dishes and quickly stopped what I was doing and sat down. The podcast was about a landmark study on the economic impact of racism on the lives of Black boys. I will email you the link to the podcast after this, but bottom line is that white boys who grow up rich are more likely to remain that way, while Black boys are more likely to become poor than to stay wealthy. According to the study, Black boys fare worse than white boys in 99% of America. That's a sobering statistic that there's only 1% of communities in this country where all kids, regardless of race, do equally well. What did the study say that was unique about that 1% of communities? One, they mostly had low poverty rates, which we have. Two, they showed less discrimination in surveys and tests of racial bias. And three, there was a presence of Black fathers in the community. I think it's safe to say that our community falls short in 2 out of the 3 criteria. And after listening to this podcast, I felt incredibly hopeless and helpless.
That is an interesting study, but surely Christine is not suggesting that our local government can, or is responsible for, addressing that monumental disparity.
And more deeply than ever before, I questioned our decision to move here. And I'm here tonight to ask you to assure me that I didn't make a mistake.
We are not sure that such a utopia exists, but we are sure that our local government should not assure Christine that she did not make a mistake seeking it on our island. Our local government has no power over such things and should not pretend to.
I'm asking the City Council to commit to making Bainbridge a 1% community. And with your leadership, your partnership with other grassroots efforts, initiatives, businesses, and nonprofits on the island, I really believe that we could work together to reduce racial bias and discrimination on Bainbridge and make our community more welcoming to all people.
How can our government reduce bias? Will it pass a law regulating what views or biases are allowed? Even if it could do such a thing, which it cannot, how would that make our community more welcoming to all people, if we were to require everybody share the mandated values of some people? This is not a job for local government. Rather, much like the children interacting with other children, this is something that must be dealt with by challenging poor speech and values with better speech and values, and trying to convince our neighbors rather than trying fruitlessly to use our government to compel them to opinions we think they should have.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is tough. Please come on up. One of my jobs is to try to enforce the rules we have. And one of those rules is that no clapping and outbursts and stuff. I doubt there's anyone in the room tonight who disagrees with what's being said. The reason for the rules is so no one feels uncomfortable. But if you could try to respect them, I'd really appreciate it.
Excellent point, Mr. Mayor. There should be no clapping.
Please go ahead.
My name is Promise Partner. I'm a resident of Bainbridge Island. I live on Sunrise Drive. I am a white woman.
Yet again we see the elevating of racial identity, but this time it's a white person. So, just wait for it.
I am a white woman and I am a racist. Not because I intentionally commit racist acts or say racist words, but because I am a white person living in a society built on white supremacy, a society that gives more value and power to white people like me, where my experiences are centered, my values are upheld as the norm, and this is to the harm of people of color, my family, my friends, and my neighbors. I have inherited this, we all have inherited this, and we must help heal it.
Ms. Partner is one of several on our island who is, as she says, a racist. But she is confused as to why she is a racist. In her view, she is a racist because she is white and lives in a country built upon white supremacy. Ms. Partner admits that she is not racist because she has racist thoughts or commits racist actions, but simply because she is white and lives in this country and benefits from being white. There are several issues with this confused mental state and misunderstanding of racism that is common on our island. Central is the destruction of language. Racism is, according to Merriam-Webster, accurately defined as a belief that race is the primary determinant of human traits and capacities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. As Ms. Partner believes that her race, rather than her words and actions, determines her trait of being a racist, like a modern-day original sin. Because she believes that her race defines her as such, rather than her individual character and actions. Very ironically, Christine is a racist. But she is wrong when she thinks she is a racist because of her skin color. It is not her skin color that makes her a racist, but her value system. Unfortunately, Ms. Partner is not the only person on our island who believes that race is the primary determinant of the trait of racism rather than the content of her individual character. Sadly, Christine's racist viewpoint is not rare on our island and is shared by many as confused as she is.
Whether we want it to be real or not, racism is alive here among us in our community on Bainbridge.
We agree. Christine is Exhibit A.
And we need to work together to name racism and to undermine it so it won't be in control.
We agree, and we hope this video is helping.
We need open and ongoing conversation to uncover the racism here and create a place where we can share resources and power where all feel welcome.
This is an interesting goal of Christine. to find and expose the racism. But Christine has already identified the racists in her muddled view. They are already identified. They are people who are white according to her definition. So what does Christine want our local government to do to white people who are racist by virtue of being white and living here?
As a white person, I hesitate to continue living here and to have children here, whatever their race, because I want to raise my family in a community that is actively engaging this issue.
But by Christine's admission, so long as she stays in this country, and so long as she remains white, she will be a racist. So presumably she will not be able to keep her children away from racism so long as they remain within her care.
I hope that we can have your commitment as a city council to moving forward together on race equity. Thank you.
Thank you.
We would ask that our local government disregard Christine and her muddled racist ramblings.
You seem to know who's on the list. I didn't even name you, Promise, but you came up. But actually, next is Peter Berg. I don't think you're Peter, but come on up, Peter.
Good evening. Sounds like you guys know my name. I am Peter Berg. I'm an island resident, live on Miller Road. This is my first time attending a city council meeting. Thank you for offering me the opportunity to speak.
Can you pull that? I'll get a little closer to the mic or pull it up a little bit. People on TV can't hear you if you don't.
Is that better?
Yeah, thanks.
How about that? All right, I was saying thank you for the opportunity to speak and thank you for your service. I certainly appreciate what those before me have said with respect to the benefits of analyzing and possibly funding issues regarding diversity and inclusion.
This organized effort finally brings up the real reason people are there. Funding. But funding what exactly and why?
As a white male, I certainly haven't experienced any hardships or setbacks because of diversity issues here.
That is good to know. But has anybody else experienced hardships or setbacks due to discrimination, other than Christine's husband at his unspecified job in her allegation? Why is this a matter requiring our city government to get involved and for us taxpayers to pay for it?
Admittedly. So I can't speak to that specifically.
Nor can they, apparently.
But I can speak to what I believe are the benefits of diversity and inclusion. As a white male and a white male attorney, I essentially work in a profession that is akin to Bainbridge Island. My colleagues are highly educated, upper-class whites, and that's not a bad thing.
It's good to hear that being white does not make somebody bad.
But as I have been in this profession, and as the profession is maturing, I think the legal organizations are understanding that a homogeneity of a workforce isn't necessarily the best workforce. And in realizing this, they're realizing there's a benefit to a diversity of ideas and cultures and genders and races. And that's not just a social benefit, but an economic benefit.
We agree. A wide collection of viewpoints and life experiences allows for better problem solving. It makes sense that the private sector would take measures to hire employees with this diversity toward that end. It is much more difficult, however, to see how that translates to our city government and its capabilities and responsibilities.
I know my office has appointed a diversity chair and has an initiative to create and cultivate a more diverse culture in our office. And again, there's a social benefit, but we are selfish in our endeavors because we see an economic benefit. Candidly, I do not know the initiatives of the City Council. This is my first meeting. I am uneducated in that respect, and to that I apologize. But I have to think that the initiatives that we're implementing in our office and the concerns that at least the legal industry is seeing are applicable to this organization or this municipality and this local government.
Our representatives are elected by the people. It would be inapplicable to suggest that people must elect people according to a diversity initiative. We think it is also a poor idea to hire people for public jobs based on factors outside of those required for best doing the job, and straying into hiring people based on their racial identity is inviting our local government to be racist rather than fighting against racism.
Again, I candidly don't know what you're doing, but I would certainly encourage you to think of these issues and hopefully make them a priority, not just for a social good, but for an economic good and community development.
In our view, local government should not be in the business of making money. It is not the private sector, nor should it be creating community in its desired image.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and thank you for your work.
Thank you. Now Carrie can come up. I just want to confirm something before you start. After Carrie is Marcia Cutting, but there are three people who've written their names on here and drawn arrows to Marcia. Just take you in order. Okay. All right. Please go ahead, Carrie.
Hi, my name is Carrie Augusta, and I live on Bill Point Court. And I am new to this space. I am an undergrad student at the University of Washington, working on my honors undergrad thesis for anthropology, where I am looking at the transformation of white identities around race and inclusion.
That does sound like a fascinating paper. We hope Ms. Augusta makes this paper available. We would love to read it.
We've raised 4 children here on the island who are all now young adults. And it was a year ago that I became awakened to the whole reality that my white lens framed things in ways that created a positivity in my outlook at how I viewed my community and my experiences. And it wasn't until I was in an alternative anthropology course at the UW where I was able to spend a whole quarter researching and learning in a very sort of Aboriginal dynamic with Indigenous scholarship, where I was able to learn and see things through alternative perspectives that afforded me a new way of seeing things. And also within that group, I was able to experience the stories of my fellow students. There was about 4 white students in the class. Their stories of lived experiences in their communities and things that they had to go through, not just here and there, but all of the time. And it set me on a path because I had grown to love these students. And it was through education and cross-racial relationship building that I became aware of this dynamic and aware of just that I wanted to explore this.
It is certainly true that people see things through their cultural lenses. Similar to the previous commenter's discussion of the power of diversity, being able to share experiences and perspectives allows for people to all benefit so long as they are free to communicate, which is more difficult to do when superficial differences like the color of skin are elevated as reasons for division. We would hope it would not take an anthropological study to learn this lesson on differing perspectives in the fabled melting pot of America. However, if our continued trend of racial balkanization continues, it may become a realm for academics only. We hope that is not the case.
And it made me think about my own community. Being a predominantly white community, how are we engaging in our relationship with one another in our community? And it was heartbreaking.
We wonder why it was heartbreaking.
Because I wanted to understand more. And so I was able to build a relationship with Karen Vargas and some of the people in her community, and just being able to follow and be mentored by her, the spaces that she works in, and just listening to stories. And I believe that what is at the heart of this is we can understand something from a theological, from an academic understanding, but it's not until we really begin to deeply listen and acknowledge that these stories are real.
We wonder what stories she is referring to. If evidence is provided, this should not be a difficult task. Instances of racism and discrimination certainly happen, and few would deny that.
That we validate these stories and begin to build relationships that it begins to become at the heart of things. And so I am here because Erin's work I saw on Facebook, and it intersected with some of the ideas that I had.
We wonder what ideas.
At beginning to listen to stories and creating space in our community where we can engage in these kinds of conversations to the benefit of our whole community.
We agree that spaces to communicate is good. Certainly we have this in spades on our island. While there are viewpoints that are actively suppressed and shunned on our island, the views expressed at this city council meeting are not among them. More importantly, Ms. Augusta does not require our local government or local money to give room to these frequent types of conversation.
Thank you. Marcia, come on up.
Good evening. I am Marcia Cutting. I live in the Grove community. I identify as a white woman with a disability and as a racist.
Yet again, Ms. Cutting does not define racist for us, but we can assume she has a similar definition to Ms. Partner, in that she believes herself to be a racist because she is white.
Though I am working to become a recovering racist.
This brings up the question of how she can be a recovering racist. Does she plan to change her racial makeup? Or does Ms. Cutting have a different definition of racism, and she believes herself to be racist despite her white skin? These are interesting and basic questions that sadly are not addressed in this discussion.
Fostering diversity is one of the 5 overriding principles of the Bainbridge Island Comprehensive Plan, which was adopted after extensive input from a wide range of island residents. However, the plan says very little about how this principle is to be implemented or even what it specifically means.
We would submit that is likely because, like yourselves, previous people asked the government to do things that it could not do, and rather than our public officials stating that, they wasted time by putting fine-sounding words into law to avoid political ramifications. This time will be no different.
The section addressing the cultural element of the plan talks about partnering with the Suquamish tribe, which I totally support, and the housing section discusses economic diversity, which I also agree is important. But these 2 items hardly cover the full range of diversity currently present on the island, nor the diversity that we would need to become a welcoming community to those who would like to live here in the future. It seems that either the overriding principle got lost in the process of completing the plan, or perhaps was meant to be given lip service but not actually implemented.
We agree, which is what Ms. Cutting will get this time.
It is important that this overriding principle be taken seriously and implemented, starting with the appointment of an advisory group of local residents to develop a racial equity plan for the city.
Again, at the cost of taxpayer money that could be used for defined and realistic goals. While we can understand Ms. Cutting's group wanting to exercise some measure of control or gain some measure of access to the machinery of our local government, we would advise against that until they can better understand what it is they are trying to do beyond gaining control and access to government.
The good news is we don't have to start from scratch. The Government Alliance on Race and Equity, also known as GARE, has resources that we can use, including how-to manuals and resource guides. More than 120 governmental units across the country, including Seattle, King County, and Tacoma, belong to GARE. But the Alliance is not just for large cities. Brookline, Massachusetts, Haywood, California, and Minnetonka, Minnesota also participate. Minnetonka has a statement on the GARE website which says, Minnetonka strives to be a community where all people have a sense of belonging and potential for success. However, we recognize that there is a history of individuals in our country and in our community being impacted by deliberate institutional decisions and historical imbalance. The second sentence is important. Without it, the first sentence is merely a platitude, and we don't need any more platitudes. We need serious and concerted action if we are to actually foster diversity on this island, beginning with a racial equity advisory group. Thank you.
How would diversity possibly be fostered? What differing people? How would they be enticed to come here? We cannot even make our island welcoming to conservatives, which make up half our nation. So how would this possibly achieve diversity?
Thank you. Next is Gina. And after Gina is Sal.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me to speak. My name is Gina Corpus, and I'm a member of the Squamish Nation in British Columbia. I was born and raised on Bainbridge Island on New Brooklyn on a 20-acre farm. My sisters still live there. And I have served on the Indigenous Peoples Day Celebration Committee for 3 years. And I also just started my own nonprofit organization, the Indepino community of Bainbridge Island and vicinity. So while I support being an Indigenous or original person of North America, I also support mixed heritage.
We hope Ms. Corpu's support isn't limited to only people of those particular ethnicities.
As mixed heritage peoples in Kitsap County have the highest percentage of population.
Ms. Corpus says she supports mixed ethnicity people as they are the majority population. This is interesting given previous discussion.
Now, I've been asked to present the budget that we used for the 2018 celebration, and I'd like to advocate for a line item that be an annual line item to support the Indigenous Peoples Day celebration.
Why should taxpayers be forced to pay for your group's celebration? Should local government be in the business of paying for parties if that party is hosted by a racial group? If we want access to equal opportunity for people and all different races and groups asked for the same thing, how long would it take to bankrupt our city?
So I did make copies of the... Does everybody have a copy? Okay, so as you can see, we had some very, very active people who went out and solicited donations for the cause.
Donations are a great way to achieve this goal. We noticed that Ms. Phillips was able to raise more than she requested, so we have to wonder again why our tax money is being requested.
Especially when we found out that the city had in fact not allocated any money at all to help support Indigenous Peoples Day. We were told there were zero funds. And so with that $1,500 in donations, we paid honorariums to our guests, to our panelists, to a woman who came and made fry bread for us. And there are some things that are just essential to Indigenous celebrations, and fry bread is one of them. Drumming is one of them. Without drummers, you cannot have an Indigenous celebration. Without singers and without dancers, you cannot have a celebration. And you can never, in our world, in the Indigenous way, ever invite anyone to come into your territory without offering something in return. And sometimes it's blankets, and sometimes it's dollars. And so in our way, we like to offer both, because some have ferry fares, some came all the way from Bellingham, Tacoma, and I think it's just right that we reimburse them for those expenses.
We can understand why Ms. Corpus would think she should reimburse her guests. But we do not think that we should be expected to pay for her guests as taxpayers when we have better uses for our money than paying for celebrations.
So I hope you can pass that line item for us, and I would appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sal?
My name is Sal Drosalia. I live at...
Is Sal crying? Was it the line about blankets or reimbursing travel expenses that got him choked up? We wonder.
9679 Battle Point Drive. Sorry, I own a business on 9463 Business Park Lane.
Can you pull that mic up a little closer to you?
I'm usually not this tall, so...
Thanks.
But, clearly I'm emotional. And it's because I'm here. And there's a couple things. One is I'm judging this lady because she's not like me, and I really was.
This is an interesting group of admitted racists and people who judge others because they look different from others, asking for our taxpayer money to pay for diversity.
And I apologize, but it's just kind of who I am. Yeah. No, I'm good. I appreciate it. Thank you. And the other is because all these people had to show up for this. Like, that's kind of effed up.
They had to show up for this? We are pretty sure they did not have to show up for the city council meeting if they did not want to.
Like, just as a... It's just interesting. How about that? It's interesting.
And getting more interesting the more you talk.
So I have some notes here. I already clearly am nervous. I was going to tell you guys that. So I honestly believe that hopefully everybody in this room, and I really do, believes that all the stuff we're talking about occurs. And we can even, for me, we can put that aside and say, let's just agree that it happens, and it happens enough that we should deal with it.
We can agree that celebrations and drumming happens, but we cannot agree with you that our city government needs to deal with it.
And so for me, I can qualify experiences personally. I got some emails. I got people who allowed me to record, and
We understand you want to bring your Chamber of Commerce issues into this proceeding in the hope that you can score some kind of points. But you need to slow down and provide evidence if you want to look even remotely convincing.
I'm willing to put all the information out there for anything I talk about because I want you guys to make your own minds up for what it is. Does it sound like this? Is it not? I don't know. But I know what I think. But everybody's, you got your own opinion.
Are you even trying to communicate?
So if we all agree on it.
If we all agree on what?
My only real ask is what is the city willing to do on an immediate and continued basis so we don't have to do this, so people don't get called niggers, so swastikas.
You cannot possibly think that a line item funding of your group is going to keep people from making racial slurs.
And I get that a certain amount of this stuff happens. No matter what we do, a certain amount's going to happen. I get that. And I'll accept that. I won't stop fighting, but I'll accept that.
So you will accept some amount of racial slurs, but you think our island has surpassed the SAL quota for racial slurs? Is it really that bad out there?
What I won't accept is that, I've lived here for 20 effing years. I've owned a business for 15, and I get treated like shit on a regular basis here.
Of course, it's about you getting treated badly. Sal, have you looked in the mirror? Do you think, just tiger teaming, just spitballing, just mulling it over, that it's even possible that you were treated poorly for reasons that might have nothing at all to do with the fact that you were 30% non-white?
I'm sorry for cursing, but it's just how I feel.
Your cursing is the best part of your speech.
On a regular basis, it's been the past couple of years, and I don't know if I just noticed more or it's more overt towards me. I'm not sure.
You are not a young man. You have lived here for 15 years. It has only been in the past 2 years, and you think you being treated poorly is because of a new rash of racism. You may be pushing the narrative that it has to do with the Trump presidency, but good luck convincing anybody that our island became a Trump stronghold.
I certainly don't feel like I have the same opportunities as 55-year-old white men on this island.
What opportunities do 55-year-old white men have?
And I believe that I deserve that opportunity.
Your feelings are not very convincing evidence of anything.
Not because I need to be a 55-year-old white man.
Again, what opportunity are you talking about that 55-year-old white men have that you don't?
Because I have worked my ass off for 20 years here. I've been a volunteer firefighter. I don't want to qualify. You guys can figure that stuff out for yourself.
No, please don't skip the detail. Please qualify for us because we have absolutely no idea what you are babbling about.
But what has to happen for people to return emails on time?
Return emails on time? How is that at all related to racism or diversity?
For people not to lie, for people, because the stuff actually goes on, and it goes on at this level, not you guys, I'm not blaming anybody here, but in the city level, it goes up. So, let me see if I got anything super important to say.
Spoiler alert. You don't.
The other thing is, and I tell this to Aaron, who I disagree with often, is I don't want to blame anybody for anything. I don't care to blame. I blame myself for it taking 20 years to get here. I blame myself for not believing Karen when she told me this in 2004. Because I wanted to ride out that I'm 70% white. And I did.
Does that mean you were 70% racist? Does that mean people respond to your emails 70% faster than they do to some other people?
And then I crashed and burned. And I have nobody to blame for me. So I will try to do whatever I can. I appreciate it.
Your coat's still up here. Thank you for coming and making those comments. Don't forget your coat up here. Steve, it looks like you know you're next, Steve. Please come on up.
Hi, I'm Steve Soltar. I live on the bad side of Old Creosote Hill Road. I moved to the island in 1978. I guess that means I'm a relative newcomer. A few years ago, I went to a Black Lives Matter demonstration or celebration or gathering in Bremerton. And maybe 10% of the crowd were white men, white women. So someone thanked the white people for attending. And one white guy responded and he said, you know, it's a hell of a lot easier to come here and speak up and stand up and be seen than it is in my own house, in my own community. That's why I'm here. I think here in our own community, we can pretend that we have no problems because we're all good people. We can pretend that we have no accountability, no responsibility because we're all good people. And we can occasionally cough up $1,500 for an Indigenous Peoples Day or devote a week to being the National Hunger and Homeless Awareness Week. Thanks a lot. We have some serious work to do, some serious lifting to do.
What work do we have to do other than ensure people reply to Sal's emails faster?
My children grew up on Bainbridge Island. They made it out of here by luck with some exposure to people who were not like them. We, through a fluke, became involved with the Native American community from Vancouver that used to come down and pick Farakio Suimatsu. Made friends, and that was very good for my children. But when they went off into the real world, their ability to relate to African Americans was pretty nil.
That is remarkable given Seattle and Tacoma being so close. More importantly, what is that you want our local government to do? Do you want them to pay money to non-white people, maybe give them 40 acres and a mule, to move to our island so that parents don't have to take measures to ensure their children travel off island?
And they had to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and learn to do that. We have a few people here on the island who appear to be African Americans. Why should we care? Huh? Their kids get called names, they're not happy in school, but most of us are happy. I think we need to care because we're not fully human until all people are recognized as fully human.
We do not need our local government to make us recognize that all people are fully human.
Thank you.
Thank you. Brenda?
Hello, my name is Brenda Fantroy Johnson, and I've lived here for 12 years. I am an author and a mother and a Black woman. The first question I always get asked is, how long you been here? Like there's a certain number that means I'm okay. When I leave my house every day, I give myself the talk. Where you going? Who you gonna see? Should you be worried? What you gonna do if somebody pulled you over? What's gonna happen? Are you going to Bremerton? Are you going to Tacoma? I've been called a lot of names in all three places. I came here because I saw Aaron on Facebook. My husband, who is white, saw Aaron downtown wearing a Brown People Live Here Too shirt. And I said, damn, I gotta get one of those. Because they do. You know, I get the most problem from kids, and they get it from their parents. That's why we have to start early.
We agree with Ms. Johnson. We do have to start early with our children, and that is how ignorance is defeated. By parenting, not by local government funding celebrations.
You guys send them off, they go away, they see people like them, they come back, they see me, and they wonder where the hell I came from. I've been here all along. I see people who grab their children and move them out the way. You know, the days of black people having tails are long gone, but it's not. Somewhere there's an unwritten law today that says it's okay. It's okay now more than ever, and it's not. So whenever I hear somebody say, hey, we're meeting to talk to people about this, I'm gonna be there. And I'm gonna be watching when I'm voting what happens. And I'm telling everybody, because now we have a platform where we can tell everybody, where everybody will know what's going on here on Bainbridge. Yeah, we live in a bubble. We do. But I see people trying to break through it all the time. Like, no, you are not safe here. You are not safe anywhere because we don't want you here. And it's not just me. It's anybody who's just a little bit brown. You don't have to be as dark as me. Thank you.
We agree. Communication is key for breaking through the bubble. And we would add that you don't even have to be a little bit brown to be excluded on our island. If your views are just a little bit conservative, you will find yourself also shunned. It happens all the time on our intolerant island.
Thank you. Is it Chastity? Yeah, please come on up.
Chastity Malatesta. I am a middle school science teacher, formerly 12-year science teacher, and I teach at St. Cecilia, right here across from Safeway. If you don't know where that church is, you should visit. I come here today as a mom of 3 white-appearing boys who are amazing and precocious, and a white husband who I love, who has no hair and is bald, and goes back and forth on the Amazon school ferry with 350 of his closest Amazon buddies. The Bainbridge Island is changing. The Amazon families are changing the island. Families like mine, multicultural, biracial, I wish to say bilingual, but I can't, who teach in a school with 40% Hispanic students, who serve the island in multi ways at your restaurants and at your landscapers, and yet are unseen in city council.
That may be true, but we cannot mandate that people vote for others based on their skin color, nor should we.
Are unseen at city events, and we talk about indigenous populations or celebrations. I rarely see all the servers. I rarely see all the people working hard.
Why do you not see those kids at events, and is it a problem? More importantly, what should our local government do about it?
But in my classrooms, I have all their kids, and I know how hardworking they are from morning to night to make sure those kids make it through the day. As a responsibility for my white-appearing, amazing sons, I would love to say this before you today is an opportunity. So as much as you're hearing from my amazing colleagues who are giving you these opportunities, and whatever triggers you leave here tonight with of, oh my gosh, this is a problem, this is your opportunity that's laid before you.
The problem is we don't understand what problem you are trying to tell us exists, and we do not understand what you think our taxpayer money will do to fix it.
I think there is hope in every single one of their stories. And I say that because I have to believe, as a teacher and as a mom and living on Bainbridge, that every one of those new families from Amazon that's Indian, Japanese, black, white, and the people that went before us, like Karen Vargas, who brought me into Bainbridge School District Multi-Advisory Council, believes that Bainbridge is an amazing place to raise kids. They need relationship and reciprocity with leaders who look a little bit like them.
We think they do not need to see people who look like them. Instead, parents should be raising their children to not look at skin color as a defining feature about a person. Parents should raise their children to look up to role models with superior content of character, not similar skin color.
They need opportunities to talk about safe spaces where we can talk about nigger Or we can talk about someone calling them a name. This happens. Kids are practicing these things because they don't have relationships with African Americans. They don't have relationships with Hispanic. Spick. They don't have relationships, so they use cracker. It's up to us on our island to guide our students and also to give them the kind of love and relationship. And that only happens by speaking with clarity, truth, and with expedience on matters that matter the most to the island. If you raise your kids here, you want your kids to come back and be near my kids. I want a tribe of healthy-minded individuals who are intelligent with respect to race. Thank you.
We agree with that.
Thanks. And the last person who's signed up is Karen. Come on up, Ms. Vargas.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Karen Vargas. I moved here back in 1992. My husband and I were raising 3 children. When we got here, we found out that we were one of the only African-American families that was living here on the island at that time. My children had a very difficult time in the school district. I had my oldest son, Zach Townsend, that would come home and he would cry because he would say, "I do not want to be black." And he meant that thing. And it hurt me to the core of my heart that here it was, a 3rd grader, coming home every day crying about being who he was. I had my daughter that was in the 2nd grade. And she stopped talking. She withdrew. She was very depressed. She didn't want to go to school. The teachers would call me and say, "Well, I think she needs to be in special needs class. She's not engaging with the other students on the playground." She would stand there while everybody else was playing. And I asked her what was going on, and she told me, "Mommy, they call me nigger, they pull my hair, they spit on me." So she was being culturally bullied. My 3rd son, he has been in special needs ever since early ed because his response to the cultural bullying that was going on in the school district was to retaliate and to fight. So he was labeled difficult child, very aggressive, difficult to deal with, was always suspended, labeled. And so that went on for their entire schooling here on Bainbridge Island. I went to the school district. I said, "How can I be involved?" I started going to the classrooms, being an assistant in the classrooms, asking the school district, do they have any multicultural advisory councils, anything that I could work with the school district so that we can begin to get some cultural competency training, anything that we can do to be able to address these issues. The school district said, yes, we have a multicultural advisory council. And so we started working with the council. I am invested in transforming some of the relational pieces here cross-culturally. And I think that it's important that we do that on multiple levels. Work with the Multicultural Advisory Council. The council would love to work with the city. And we hope that this can happen. Thank you.
Ms. Vargas brings up a useful discussion of racism in our schools and her efforts to get involved to make our schools a more tolerant place. We hope her efforts were successful. Now, in 2018, we cannot imagine that our schools operate in a racist fashion. If that is incorrect, surely evidence should be provided before we take seriously any call for our public funds, although we would have to wonder, in that case, if the problem can be fixed given its failure despite the work over the years by those like Ms. Vargas. At this point, this group of admitted racists and people who judge others based on how they look, who have failed to identify a problem let alone a solution, should not be granted an advisory role or public funds. Discussion is good. Thanks for being part of it. Together we can harness our diverse views to better identify and solve problems in our community. Ciao for now.